So I ask you, what can you do today to make your brand come alive in the hearts of those who experience it? So we're going to give it a few more minutes just for folks to sign in, and then I'm going to have a couple of small little polls that I'm going to ask people to participate in. I know a few of you will answer with a yes, but few of you may not. So it should be interesting. So we'll give it a couple more minutes. How are things in Moscow, Peter?
It's still green winter now. We had white winter and now it's green winter.
A green winter. Oh yes. My goodness. So it's cold, but there's no more snow.
No snow, cold.
Yeah, the last time I was
some raining, little rain, and cold wind actually. It is promised to us though on the beginning of May it will be warmer, but let's see.
Let's see. Do you still have your dog?
My what?
Your dog, your big dog, your big furry dog?
Unfortunately not. He's gone already. But I have a little but nice dog here.
Yeah, I remember the little one I saw in your home in Moscow, in the city.
Yes, she's now with me here and has.
So cute, that little dog.
Two puppets, two
puppies?
Uh-huh.
Fabulous.
Born 20th of April. Just 10 days old.
Oh my gosh, they're brand new. How cute. That's awesome.
Very nice one.
All right, well, we'll start with some Q&A on this polling, and then we'll get into it, and then if others join, that's great. So let's just see if I can come up with the first question. Everyone should see this. Have you ever attended an Olympics? Okay, so I got one more person to add. So out of 10, 7 said no and 3 said yes. So, okay. All right, so 7, we got more folks joining. So that was my guess. It was going to be that not many of you had attended Olympics. Of course, I'm guessing everyone has seen Olympics on television, but to be there is a really special experience. And so part of what you're going to see in today's presentation is, kind of why we get so excited about the Olympic Games. So that's the first poll, 27% yes and 73% no. All right, let's ask, all right, I'll share that with you guys. All right, so you can see the results. Now, let's see if I can ask the second question. I want to relaunch the first poll. I want to go to the second poll. All right, so that poll I've already asked. So I'm a little bit new to this, and so unfortunately I can't see how I get this. Hold on just a second. Here we are. So here's the second poll question. Have you ever heard of trading Olympic pins? Okay, so let me let that go for a second or two more. So far, we've had 67% have heard of trading Olympic pins, 33% have not. All right, I'll end this poll and share the results. You guys can see the sharing. So most of us haven't attended Olympic Games, but most of us heard of trading Olympic pins. And then the third question, have you ever traded an Olympic or other kind Coke, Disney, sports, etc. pin? And let me launch that poll. Okay. All right, so I'm going to end this poll and share the results. You can see that 23% have actually traded a pin and 77% have not traded. So not many of you have attended. Most of you have heard of pin trading, but only a few percentage have actually done that. So that's a good frame for me as we get started with this presentation today, because that'll help us understand kind of the goal of what we were trying to accomplish in Nagano. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll taking and switch to presentation mode, speaker view. And now I'm going to keep it unmuted, because if you guys want to stop and ask a question, I want you to do that. We're a small enough group, we can do that. But I'll go ahead and share my screen and we can start from here. All right. All right, hopefully everyone can see my presentation screen. And we'll go ahead and get started. So again, welcome everyone. So glad you're here. I'm excited about what we're going to share today as it relates to brain expansion and the optimization of that. This is the second in our webinar series that is going to be held every 2 weeks. So the next one will be on May 14th. And I hope you can join in and continue the conversation, continue the learning, and let's have some fun while we're at it. That said, I'm still aware that we're all kind of in this quarantine period, and I hope everyone listening today is in a good place and that your families are in a good place. And I'm thankful for what has come out of this, which is my opportunity to have you participate. Okay, it looks like I'm going to add 2 more people to this presentation. So that's great. And bear with me because I have to stop sharing while I let those folks in, but we can jump back to it. All right. So we're going to talk about the Coca-Cola Nagano Olympic Pin Trading Program. So this program happened in Nagano, Japan. The timing was going to be fortuitous in the sense that the Olympics are coming back to Japan. They're coming to Tokyo. And sadly, it won't be this year, but hopefully we will see those Olympics in Tokyo next summer. And I'm thrilled for those athletes because they've worked so hard to get there. So let's start with a little bit of the legacy of pin trading and collecting. So for Coca-Cola, they've actually been the official pin trading sponsor of the Olympic Games since 1988 in Calgary, Calgary, Canada. And they have had, since that time, consecutive pin trading programs, of which I've been fortunate enough to work on 4 or 5 of them. So it's been really terrific for me to be able to participate in this process and see what happens when you can create an experience for fans of the Olympics, fans for the Coca-Cola brand, and just fans in general of getting together as humanity to celebrate what makes us all terrific. So surprisingly or not, pin trading has become the #1, what we'll call consumer activation or participation at the Olympic Games. People who have never ever owned a pin before, never experienced pin trading, are the ones that sometimes get to be the most enthusiastic about collecting and trading pins. And we're going to get into that very soon, why they do that. But it is a very, very special experience that they all get to participate in. So why is pin trading so important to the Olympic Games? Well, it actually has its origins back to the very first modern day Olympics in Athens, Greece in 1896. And those pins were actually made from cardboard discs, and they were designed as colorful badges to identify athletes, officials, and news media. So they had an official function in the beginning, and curiosity of the different participants and the design of those pins is what lured people into actually trading them. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So in the Stockholm Games of 1912, the first souvenir Olympic pins were produced for sale to collectors. So that was 16 years later, and collectors could actually buy pins. And what a great way to memorialize their experience at the Olympic Games than to bring back a uniquely designed pin representing your experience at those games. And Olympic pin trading as a activity actually began in earnest in Paris in 1924. So it'll be interesting as we fast forward to not the next Summer Olympic Games, but the following one, which is in Paris, to see what pin trading looks like in Paris more than 100 years later. So that will be fascinating. So the big question, and this is the question that I want to share with you, is why would people line up outside the Coca-Cola Pin Trading Center at midnight? And so that's a loaded question, but let me tell you a little bit what happened. You see, back in 1998 at the Olympic Games, I was actually home in Atlanta. It was a Sunday morning of the last day of the Olympic Games. And I got a call from a member of my team who called and said, the police called him that morning, his time, asking for a permit. And I said, I'm really confused, Scott. Why would you need a permit? And he said, well, we didn't have a permit for the people that were lined up outside the Olympic Games, outside the Olympic Pin Trading Center, the Coca-Cola Olympic Pin Trading Center, more than 12 hours before the pin of the day was to be sold. So that was an amazing thought to hear, that we had people standing in line in freezing temperatures for more than 12 hours waiting for a pin. So I'll leave that question with you, and let's get into what happened that caused them to do that. So you have to understand the magic of pins. And as I mentioned earlier, pin trading became the #1 spectator sport of the Olympics since 1988. And if we think about it, pins as a collectible, they're the perfect fit for fans around the globe, right? They're small, they're intricate, they're easy to trade. They have the ability to break down barriers. I've seen elderly gentlemen trade pins with young little girls. One might be from Sweden, the other one might be from Colombia. And what drew those individuals together who would never have spoken to each other ever was a unique pin that they were wearing on their lapel or wearing on a lanyard. And they knew that those pins from the other person were tradable pins. They had them on their lanyard. They were there to be traded, and they drew the individual's eyes in. And you can see the faces of these two boys in the upper part of the screen, and you can see the enthusiasm and the awe and the wonder that pin trading creates for individuals. And so that's what was going on. And that's why it broke down barriers of culture and language and region and geography and customs. It allowed for a personal connection. So you're at Olympic Games, you are a visitor to that country, you are overwhelmed with the majesty of what is going on, the differences in the cultures, but there's a commonality that is created with these Olympic pins. And in the case with Coca-Cola being the official sponsor of the Olympic Pin Trading Center since 1988, they had a very important role to play. And so these pins became conversation pieces. Somebody might ask you, where did you get that pin? And you can say, oh, I bought that pin at the Coca-Cola Pin Trading Center, or I traded that pin with a gentleman from Germany, or this little old lady from Japan traded me her pin, and I gave her two of my pins. And you can see there's stories that are created around what is this amazing, dynamic, integral part of this special thing called Olympic pin trading. And so pins create a narrative. And so I want to tell you about my Nagano Olympic experience. And as we think of it, I want you as brand owners, brand stewards, small business owners to think about your own brand. Or even, and if you're none of those, maybe your individual personal brand, right? Because we're all brands in and of ourselves. But realize that brands are one of our collections. And that's what pin trading is. It allows us to make a collection. And they're part of how we organize and link our lives. So we're going to delve into my story with the Nagano Olympic Games that started back in 1997. So I apologize ahead of time for the quality of this picture because it was taken off the internet. Sadly, all of my pictures that were taken back in 1997 and 1998 had been lost, but I was able to find this one. And you can see this red building with a Coca-Cola bottle the size of almost 30 feet tall on it, and a little circle that says Coca-Cola Olympic Pin Trading Center in the middle of downtown Nagano. And so we were located, the Pin Trading Center was located across from the Central Square Metals Plaza. So every night around 8 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock at night, they gave away the medals for the individuals who had won in outdoor activities at the games. So downhill skiing or slalom skiing, that sort of thing. They would have an Olympic ceremony right across the street from where we are. So what was very important for us to locate our pin trading center around where there would be natural crowds built. So we opened the pin trading center 6 weeks before the opening ceremonies. We designed 500 unique pins. We had more than 450,000 visitors. The pin of the day formed the contour bottle. So you can see the bottle in the picture. And what you should also be able to see that half the bottle is the caramel color, right? That's what started. We started with a full-size bottle that was the color of Coca-Cola, the beverage. And then as each pin of the day was unveiled, we've revealed a portion of the bottle to show that particular pin. So you can see this picture was taken about halfway through the Olympic Games. And we sold those pins at 11 a.m. each day of the Olympic Games. So as I mentioned, people started lining up for the pin of the day more than 10 hours before we sold the pins. Now, Savannah, I'm seeing that some folks are in the chat box. So I'll let you look in there and see if there's anything that, any questions that have been asked, since I'm not able to do that in this presentation mode. Is that okay?
Yeah, okay. So there is a comment that you may want to mute everyone's mic until the question answer session just to prevent random mic sounds. So
Okay.
there was that comment, but oh, Bob Yo says, I'm not seeing your pictures, only the written part of the presentation. But I've been seeing the pictures, so I'm not sure if everyone's encountering that problem.
Yeah, is anyone else not seeing the pictures?
I'm all right.
You're all right. Okay, Bob, maybe there's something wrong with your screen. I apologize you're not seeing the pictures, but
yeah, I've actually seen a few of these things, so thank you.
okay. All right, I don't hear a lot of background noise. If I do hear it, I will mute everyone, but for now, I'm happy for you guys to participate in the conversation. So we'll leave it as it is for now, but thanks so much for sharing those comments, Savannah. Okay, so let me share with you my team. I had a gentleman named Scott Pitts, who was my Olympic licensing manager. Then there was a gentleman named Jonathan Long, who was on the ground in Nagano from the very beginning in 1997. He was born and raised in Japan to missionaries. So he was fluent in Japanese, which was great. He was an American fluent in Japanese. And that gave us the ability to communicate succinctly and smartly with our counterparts in the Coca-Cola organization and with the folks that were from the Japanese Olympic Committee as well. And then my role at the time was event merchandising group manager. So what were our tasks? Well, we were responsible for creating a Coca-Cola Nagano Olympic licensing program that would reinforce Coca-Cola's brand presence at the games. So they had a lot of brand presence. They had uniforms, they had kiosks, they had memorabilia and signage throughout the Nagano prefecture. And all of that was going to give, and of course they had opportunity for their guests to go to Olympic events. And they were also given some memorabilia. But what we created was an opportunity for people who had engaged with us at the Pin Trading Center to actually buy or trade a pin that would help them memorialize their experience at the games. And that was really special to do because while they could take pictures, this was a 3D physical piece of memorabilia that enabled them to solidify their experience, their memories from those games. And that enabled them to extend those warm memories into the future. And on top of that, we were responsible for generating $1 million in royalty revenues from this particular event. So that was a big challenge for us. And so we wanted to balance doing right by the brand, by its heritage, by the Olympic Committee and what they were trying to do with the importance of generating royalty revenue, which for any brand licensing program, that is an important component. So I don't want to minimize that. So as I mentioned earlier, and you can see on the screen some pictures of Olympic pins that we created. These were women's hockey pins, and there was a pin for every team. So you can see different colored uniforms. I think the one in the center lower right is Sweden. I apologize, I don't know the one at the, oh, it says China. Yep. So you can see why we had so many different pins, right? We had every sport combined with every country that was participating in that sport. That made for a lot of different unique stock keeping units. So the work on the project began in January of 1997. The game started in February 1998. So we were way behind the 8 ball, as we say, in the United States, because we had so much to do to get started, to get the pins made. And there was many things that had to be done before we actually started making those pins. So let's delve into that. So the first thing that we had to do was get a signed program agreement between the Nagano Olympic Committee and the Coca-Cola Company. So we couldn't, just because we were a sponsor of the games, didn't mean that we could just go about making Olympic pins with the Coca-Cola marks and the Nagano Olympic marks without their permission. So we had to engage with them. And for me to do that, I had to justify to the committee why they would even want to allow us to do that. They were very skittish about it. They had their own brand licensing program, right? So this was the Nagano Olympic logo that was on a lot of merchandise that they'd been selling for probably more than 3 years. And here we were 1 year out saying, hey, let us participate. We want to create additional merchandise that will have the Coca-Cola logo along with the Nagano Olympic logo. And they were skittish about it because they didn't want our merchandise to cannibalize their merchandise. And because both marks were going to be on the pins and other merchandise, we were going to be sharing those royalties. And so for the Nagano Olympic Committee, a couple things came to mind. We don't want to cannibalize our own sales. We don't want to lose royalty revenue because it's important. We need that revenue to pay for the Olympics. And the third thing was this going to distract the fans of the Nagano Olympic Games away from what was considered a pristine program? And so I made an argument with them that what we were actually doing was bringing in incremental consumers, people who love the Coca-Cola brand, people who had been buying Coca-Cola merchandise and pins for many, many years, people who know Coca-Cola maybe as well or even better than the Nagano Olympics. Now that's kind of a brash statement to make, right? But the reason I say that is market share for the Coca-Cola beverage in Japan was 80%. And Coca-Cola had been in Japan with its beverages at that point for more than 40 years. So for Coca-Cola, the Japanese knew the brand very, very, very well. So before I could even get approval from the Nagano Olympic Committee, I had to get approval from the International Olympic Committee. And that's what the logo you see here, right? The International Olympic Committee is located in Lausanne, Switzerland. The Coca-Cola Company has had the longest standing sponsorship with the International Olympic Committee. It actually started in 1928, and it's been continuous ever since. So it is 92 years long. Of course, back then we were talking about 1998, so it was 70 years long. And so because we were a sponsor of the Olympics, they were supportive of us if the Nagano Olympic Committee would agree also. So what were the things that we had to negotiate? Well, I had to negotiate with them where the merchandise could be sold, what categories of merchandise we would create, who could manufacture that merchandise, how the product would be approved, and what the royalty rate would be and what the share or split would be. And so I'll just give you a little bit of an insight. When I went to Japan to meet with the Olympic Committee, the 4 representatives of the Olympic Committee, I was in my mid-30s. I had a young Japanese person on my team that was supportive of us. She was in her early 20s. And then I had 4 Nagano Olympic Committee gentlemen who all were older than 70 years old. And I was through this young lady that was with me, trying to explain to them all the things that I just told you about, why it would be beneficial for them. And they did not want to give in to me. They kept saying, reasons why it didn't make sense. And of course, I could not leave without getting permission. And finally, one of the gentlemen said, why would anyone want to buy Coca-Cola? And so I said, okay, this has got to be it. I've got one shot left to get their permission. I said, that's a great question. I don't know, but what I can tell you is last year, the Coca-Cola Company sold more than $1 billion of retail merchandise globally. And they all oohed and ahed at that number, and they said, okay, we'll do it. So that was the linchpin that got us the approval that we needed. Now, what merchandise could be sold? Primarily it was pins, but we also created apparel. We created other collector items, and we also created or gave the permission to put into this was the Coca-Cola polar bear. And there was a story around that polar bear because for the Nagano Olympic Committee, their mascots were these 3 little snow owlets, little snow owls. And so there was concern, I'll put the concern in quotation marks, there was concern that the polar bear might eat those owls. So of course we said, no, the polar bear only wants to share Coca-Cola, so there's no fear. And they smiled and approved the category for Coca-Cola Polar Bear Plush. And then who can manufacture the merchandise? We said that we would use the Nagano Olympic Committee official licensees if they could produce the merchandise at the same quality and deliver the merchandise at the same timeline that we needed. Well, in all the categories that I mentioned, except for the polar bear, which was our specific category for Coca-Cola, we were using their licensees, except for the pins. And the reason for that was, instead of having one company who could deliver the quality and deliver on the timing, they had about more than 100 small little companies that had come together into a consortium. So we got permission from them to use a company called Aminco, who could deliver the quality and deliver the timing that we needed to create those pins. Now the approvals, we said to them, listen, we're gonna do all the heavy lifting. All you have to do is review to make sure that the that the Nagano Olympic marks are used properly. And we made that very simple for them, and so they approved them. And then ultimately the royalty rate, we agreed, I think at the time for the pins, it was actually 30% because Olympic pins have a very high margin. They're a very high margin business. So there's a lot of profit in them. And we'd agreed that we would split the margin, that royalty 50-50. So each company, each organization got 15% royalty. So I talked a little bit about the hesitation that the Olympic Committee gave. They didn't think there would be interest, but ultimately I was able to convince them. And so I kind of stuck my neck out a little bit because they told me, the Japanese are sophisticated buyers. They would have no interest in buying Coca-Cola Olympic pins, but we believed in it. But the risk was great because if we were going to go to all this trouble to get them to buy into it, to build a pin trading center, and I'll get into this in a little bit more detail, but the pin trading center was only going to be open for a little over 2 months, but it had to be built as if it was going to be built for.
Yeah, I washed it and then I dried it like halfway, and then I hung dry. I'm sure it's all dry. I washed it like a day or two ago.
I'm going to have to. Hey, if you're talking in the background and it's not about the presentation, please mute yourself, okay? So we had to build the structure as if it was permanent. And so there was a lot of investment was going to be made by the Coca-Cola company. And we were having a lot of colleagues involved in this. So we had to make sure that we were going to be successful or we were going to be very much embarrassed. So as I mentioned, we created pins, apparel, Coca-Cola Bear plush, commemorative crystal bottles. Savannah, is there another question that's being asked?
So Kristen said earlier, I can see the deck, but no photos. And then there was another comment that says it was bound to happen with the Mike smiley face.
Okay. I'm not sure. We're gonna have to ask Zoom about the photos.
I can see them just fine, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'll ask on the follow-up after this.
Rashad just said I can see them. Oh,
okay.
I can see the deck.
Okay, so we'll ask Zoom about that question because this, I think, is a Zoom question. Why some people are seeing it and why others aren't. Go ahead, Savannah.
That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Okay. So on top of that, we had Coca-Cola Crystal and gold-plated bottles. So what we did with those bottles is we put the Nagano Olympic mark right on where the opposite side of where the Coca-Cola logo would be. And then there were other souvenirs and collectible items. So what did we need to actually get the merchandise there? We needed an event retailer who was willing to buy the merchandise from the licensees, had to secure the rights to sell the merchandise from the local authorities, and pay a portion of their retail revenue to the Coca-Cola company for the right to sell the merchandise. So on top of the royalties that the licensees were going to pay us, we found a company who was going to put up kiosks throughout the Nagano prefecture to sell our merchandise and sell our pins and pay us a portion of their revenue as a fee for the rights to be able to sell that. And that was very challenging for us because Japan is a very conservative country. Most of the organizations that would do this would want to be paid a fee for it. And so we had to find somebody that was entrepreneurial to do it. And ultimately we did find somebody, although I was getting very nervous that we weren't going to, very atypical individual. Unfortunately for us, there was a small company. So to ensure that we were going to be protected, we made him go find a bigger company to basically create a bond that would enable him to continue even if he ran out of resources. And he was ambitious enough. He found another company, they put the bond in place, and we were off to the races. So, and on top of that, we needed to secure licensees who were willing to create the merchandise. Of course, it had to be approved by both Coca-Cola and the Nagano Olympic Committee. It had to clear customs in Japan, especially if it was made outside of Japan, which most of it was. We had to deliver the merchandise by no later than December of 1997. Remember, we started in January, and all the things that I told you that we had to accomplish before we could even begin to create the merchandise. And then, of course, they had to pay royalties to both the Coca-Cola Company and the Nagano Olympic Committee. So lots of things that would normally be run in series, we were having to run in parallel, doing things in an unorthodox fashion to get everything done. And I'm sure Peter, Peter Sanava, as you're hearing me, you're thinking about the Sochi Olympics where we repeated the same cycle all over again, which was absolutely crazy. But thankfully, in both cases, we were able to get it done.
Good comment.
Yes, we were both. I think your hair is a little bit grayer than mine, but we both got a lot more gray hair after the experience.
True.
So we had to coordinate the construction of the Pin Trading Center with Coca-Cola Japan. And Coca-Cola Japan had to pay for the construction of the Pin Trading Center. So you can imagine, I think the Pin Trading Center cost about $400,000 US to make. And like I said, it was only up for like 3 months. And they were thinking to themselves, we could spend that money a lot smarter in our market promoting our beverages, right? Remember, as I have to jump back because Coca-Cola is a beverage company. The idea here around brand expansion is that they were creating merchandise that was pins and apparel and plush and commemorative bottles, right? These are all brand expansion categories. So the Coca-Cola Japan company was interested in selling beverages. Of course, they were also interested in solidifying their position with the Japanese consumer. And so if this went well, that was going to be a good thing. But they weren't believing, just like the Nagano Olympic Committee didn't think that the Japanese would buy our merchandise, neither was Coca-Cola Japan. And so we were having to convince them to make a major investment, divert their resources to this Pin Trading Center, not knowing if the return on investment would be worth their while. And so the jury, let's say the jury was out for a very, very long time. So the challenge for us, opened the Pin Trading Center in early January. And the reason for that is I didn't want people to be confused about where it was located. I wanted this to be on a natural footpath. I wanted people to see the red exterior of the building, to see the big Coca-Cola bottle, and to understand where it was so that when game times happened, there wouldn't be any issue about them knowing where to get the Coca-Cola pins. So that meant we had to move even faster, right? But this allowed us to get the word out to a broader community. So internally, what did we have to do? We had to coordinate with a bunch of different departments. The brand team, right? Anytime you create anything involving the Coca-Cola brand, you have to work with the Coca-Cola brand team, telling them exactly what you're doing, making sure you're representing the brand the way it's supposed to be represented, right? The brand team is responsible for the brand positioning and the brand promise. And they wanted to make sure that our positioning and our promise through the categories of merchandise we were creating was being reinforced. Then we had to coordinate with the PR team. The PR team was responsible for managing all the Coca-Cola athletes, managing all the media and press that was around the activities that they were doing. And of course, the Coca-Cola Pin Trading Center was a piece of that. So one of the things that we wanted to do was bring any of the sponsored athletes into the Pin Trading Center. I remember Christy Yamaguchi, who was one of the greatest Olympic figure skaters to ever skate for the United States, and I think she ultimately won a gold medal. She was one of the athletes that we brought into the Coca-Cola Pin Trading Center. So having her presence was tremendously beneficial to us because we knew it would draw a crowd, and we had to work through the PR department at the Coca-Cola company to make it happen. Another group was Worldwide Sports Marketing Team. That was the team that managed all the relationships with the International Olympic Committee and the Nagano Olympic Committee. So they were responsible for all the engagement outside of what we were doing, which was merchandise. I mentioned already Coca-Cola Japan, and each of their concerns had to be addressed. So this was a big undertaking. And in most cases, the brand team was okay. They weren't difficult to deal with. The PR team was actually very supportive. Worldwide Sports generally was okay with us, but they had some questions about what we would be doing. And so they drew our resources away from our immediate job, which was getting these pins and this other merchandise created. And as I mentioned, Coca-Cola Japan was not happy with us. They thought that we were using their resources in the wrong way. There's no other way of saying it. It was a challenge with them. So what did we offer? And bear with me, my computer just seems to be a little slow. Okay. We offered brightly colored pins, and there on the right side, you can see a picture of the pins that we created. So they were countdown pins, right? So 100 days out, 75 days out, 50 days out, 10 days, 9 days, 8 days, all the way down. Country pins, so pins from every country that participated in the games. Sport pictograms, so every sport had a unique pictogram associated with it, so we created a pin for that. Of course, the mascots, and I mentioned the owlets, and I mentioned the polar bear. There was Nagano-centric pins, so all of the different temples, or not all of them, but some special temples, and the venues that were created, which were magnificent, so we recreated pins in the shape of these venues. And then there was Coca-Cola-centric pins. So these are Coca-Cola trucks or coolers or even like six-packs, all giving us this whole collection. And so that made for a very fun, very colorful set. And of course, lots of opportunities to trade because there were so many different kinds of pins. And of course, the most important of these was the pin of the day. And as I mentioned, you saw the picture of the Coca-Cola Pin Trading Center. It was the shape of a bottle. There was the shape of the bottle on the outside, and inside it were 17 pins representing a pin, a special unique pin that was representing that day that was sold at 11 o'clock local time. And that pin was, there was only 1,998 of them made to represent the year of the Olympic Games. So a limited set of pins that were sold at this special time. And so that was an important component because every day the new pin would be revealed. So it was a mystery to everyone until that time. Let me go back. So what we had to do was promote this program. The pin of the day helped. I'll just leave it here. And so we were in the process. And so I'll tell you, right? So when we opened the Pin Trading Center in early January, the very first day we sold about $10,000 worth of pins, which was not bad. But we, as I mentioned, we had a goal of selling $1 million worth of pins. And that was a very lofty goal. And so to do that with 17 days, we had to average about $50,000 worth of pins a day. So the rest of the January timeframe, we sold about $100,000 of pins, and we had about $900,000 left. And if we kept at the same rate, there was no way we were going to make our goal. Well, Fortunately, I can tell you on day one, and of course, day one is a very important day for any Olympic Games. There's a lot of hype, there's a lot of excitement. And so on day one, we sold about $40,000 worth of pins. The pin of the day did not sell out, but it was popular. Now, day two, we actually dropped off a little, and that was not to be unexpected. We sold about $30,000. But the pin of the day became very, very exciting. Well, day one was February 12th. Day two was February 13th. Day three was February 14th. And for most of you, you'll recognize that day as Valentine's Day. And our pin of the day was in the shape of a heart. And that pin just took off. There were so many people that wanted that pin of the day. We sold out of that pin, I think, in a couple of hours. And the pin, which sold for about $10 US, ultimately sold on the Japanese market for more than $400. That's how popular that pin was. And because of that pin of the day, we then had, after that, droves of people in the pin trading center. There was a line 10 people deep across about 14 point of sales throughout the whole pin trading center, with lines outside for pins. And so, as you can imagine, that kind of created a craze, and people just got sucked up into it. And so that is why on that Sunday morning, when I was back in Atlanta, my colleague Scott Pitts called me to say the police called him in the middle of the night about a permit, because we had had a line more than a kilometer long outside of the pin trading center waiting for that last Coca-Cola Olympic pin of the day. And we had not expected it. We did not have a permit for that line, and he had to go get a permit in the middle of the night to get permission. And so why did that happen? I want to talk to that, because that is what really is important. That's the big takeaway. But before I get to that, let's talk about some of the kind of more metrics, the more specific things that are associated with any Olympic licensed merchandise program. We had to collect the royalties from all the licensees once the merchandise was sold, and the royalties were based off of wholesale sales from the licensees. And then, as I mentioned, the event retailer, we had to monitor their sales, and then they paid us a royalty or a fee, a commission on the sale based on the percentage of their retail sales. We had to ensure the Nagano Olympic Committee received their portion, which was 50%. So we had to make sure that those resources, those royalties and fees were diverted. They didn't get a portion of our event retailer fee, just the licensee fee, because we managed the event retailer. And then after that, of course, we conducted an after action review. What did we do well? What could we do better? How would we improve the experience? How would we make this program more efficient? So let me share with you some of those accomplishments. Okay, we sold virtually every pin exceeding all of our financial objectives. In fact, we ran out of many of our stock keeping units, our pins. So about 3 or 4 days before the Olympics were over, we made a desperate plea to our colleagues in Atlanta to just send over any Coca-Cola pins they had. These were not even Olympic related. We just had to have something on the shelves. We were that barren. And as soon as those pins got into the pin trading center, people bought those as well. So they didn't even have an Olympic logo on them. They were just purely Coca-Cola pins, but people were so interested in buying pins, they bought those as well. Coca-Cola and the 1998 Nagano Olympic Committee Olympics hold a special place in the heart of all the individuals that bought those pins. There were pin sets that were sold as well. And I'm sure, and then of course the bottles, and I can only imagine the individuals that were buying those pins, taking those pins and putting them in their home, showcasing them in their homes, and sharing stories about the pins they traded, about the way they bought their pins, and telling the stories to their children and ultimately to their grandchildren. This is a very positive thing. In fact, I want to go back for a second and talk about the call that I had with Scott Pitts, because he told me he was so concerned with that line being more than a kilometer long that there would be people in line that would not get a pin of the day. And so he counted off 1,998 individuals to the 1,999th person and said to them, I'm so sorry, you're standing in line for a pin of the day, but you will not get one because we only made 1,998 pins. Why don't you consider going home, getting warm, and coming back when the Pin Trading Center opens several hours from now? And that person and no one behind them even moved an inch. They were so caught up in this experience, the joy, the I can't even describe it, but they were having an experience, a positive experience about standing in line, that they were unwilling to go. They wanted to soak up everything. And our creation of the Pin Trading Center and the creation of the merchandise allowed them to memorialize that experience, which was so special to them. And as I mentioned, I think these pins, and I would swear to it, I'm sure there are people in Japan who have pins from the 1998 Nagano Olympics. In fact, I really want to go to the Olympics next year to see if I can meet some of those people who were in Nagano to hear about their experiences, because that experience is part of their story. The brand Coca-Cola, the Olympic brand, are now part of their own individual story. And I'm sure they were going to be willing to share and create more of a story with the Tokyo Games next year, but also to share that story with their family. So for brands like Coca-Cola and the Olympics, it really doesn't get any better than that, right? And thankfully for us who believed in what we were doing, knew there was something special about the Coca-Cola brand and the Olympic brand, and the fact that Coca-Cola had more than 70 years of a sponsor position with the Olympics. They had been trading their own pins for more than 2 decades at that point, had tapped into Olympic pin trading, which had been going on since 1912, and knew that we could create a special experience for these fans who came from all over the world. Most of them were Japanese, but as you can imagine in Olympic Games, there were thousands of people from all over. Every country almost on the planet was in Nagano that day. And so we got to be a part of their story. And so as you think about your own brand, how can you become part of the story of an individual, an enthusiast, a fan, a client, a consumer? What can you do to make something special? And I know you're saying, well, I'm never going to be an Olympic sponsor, or I'm never going to be an Olympic game, but you can create your own special, unique way of connecting with them. So where's the connection between the Olympic movement, a fizzy drink, and commemorative pins? Well, the success of the program did not depend on logic. There was logic in creating all the merchandise and getting the merchandise there and convincing our colleagues to allow us to do it, to convince the Nagano Olympic Committee and the International Olympic Committee to allow us to be present. But there wasn't any logic in what made this program so special. And it was special because people responded to what was being offered. What we were offering transcended common sense. The way I like to say it, a program like this works because it's associative. It offers access to something people want to feel part of and want more of. So think about that for your own brand. What is it they want to be part of, and what is it they want to be more of, and give them that. The fans there were collecting more than pins. They were collecting memories. They were collecting experiences. They were collecting a part of their own life story. They were deepening their association with an event they never wanted to forget. And that is what each of us should try to accomplish when we're creating any kind of experience, any kind of product or service. So I'm almost at the end. Let me just do a time check here. We're close to the end. There's some research that was done from Drs. Dubb and McCork. If you want other people to take up, adapt, integrate, and ultimately champion your idea, there are 4 critical requirements. These are the 4. You must know where and how to position your idea so that it has the greatest chance of succeeding, right? So remember, we were co-located across from the outdoor Olympic medal ceremony. That was one example of us giving ourselves the best chance of succeeding. We opened early. That was another chance. The idea must be involving. It must invite people to do something or act in some way rather than simply reading, observing, or agreeing. Get them involved, make them participate. Not make them, give them the opportunity to participate, and do it in a way that draws them in. The result must be clear, and it must be something that enables people to include others. So think about it. What are you doing here? You're buying a pin and you're trading a pin. Why would you trade a pin? Well, the pin on the other person has some lore to it. The pin on you has some lore to that other person. Now you're trading the pin, and then you ask that person, where are you from? How long have you been trading pins? Have you gone to an Olympic Games before? You can see these questions can be substituted with your own questions. Finally, people must believe in the vehicle. As they say, there must be trust, authenticity, relevance, and salience in the message, messenger, and medium. And we had each of those with the Nagano Olympic Coca-Cola Pin program. So, some last thoughts. Jonah Berger suggested ideas spread because of social currency, triggers, emotion, the public, practical value, and stories. So what she shares is those 6 characteristics help turn an idea from one person into something that more people are likely want to share. There are 7 requirements to do so. The idea must make sense, add value for people, trigger sharing in order to activate significant interest, be framed in a form that resembles the brand, have a sense of entity, be tangible enough to be recognized, and have generated enough of that sense broadly enough for people to desire more. These are the great takeaways that I would encourage you to think about with your own brand and with your own programs. Because just because we tapped into them with the Nagano Olympic program and we were able to make use of them in a way that was meaningful to the individuals who came and bought pins and traded pins, doesn't mean it only the Coca-Cola company or only the Olympic committee can own these. You can do so also. So we're at that point where we are stopped. We've got a couple minutes. I've got one question that was already posed to me that I'm going to ask, and then I'll ask you, Savannah, if there's any other questions. I hope this was enjoyable. I hope you got something out of it. And I'm going to stop sharing and allow people to participate. The question I have is the Coca-Cola collection of pins, Coca-Cola pins at the Nagano Olympics, part of a brand's legacy strategy? If so, in addition to emotions, can a brand initially impart values, family or health, into symbols or objects such as the pins? That's a great question, and that was offered by Michael Gale. I would say the answer is yes, right? Because brands comprise all of their attributes, right? So a brand, I say, is a promise. And so because the Coca-Cola company had been in existence since 1886, and the Olympic Committee had been in existence since 1896, they had been sharing their values for more than 100 years in both instances. And so these pins were just a representation of the values that they were sharing. Great question. Thank you for asking it. Savannah, any other questions?
Yeah, there's just been one more question. Are you a licensing brand agent? How much does a licensing agent take in fees? For example, one brand I saw has North American agent. What kind of cut do they take?
Okay, so I serve mostly as a consultant, helping my clients think about and put together great programs. I can serve as an agent. Typically, the way that agents work, if there's an established brand with real strength, then if they manage that program, they can take somewhere between 25% to even as high as 50% of the royalties to manage that program. Now, think about a program with dozens of categories of merchandise and maybe thousands of different stock keeping units. So it can be very complex, right? And each of those licensees have to be managed in an appropriate way. to make sure that your brand is protected. So that's what typically the percentage would be. If your program is up and starting, the agent would typically take a fee, like a retainer fee, until the program actually got substantiated, and it was throwing off royalties to actually cover the cost of that agent. Hopefully that answers your question.
And there's just one more comment. There's no more questions currently, but William Higgins said, great presentation. Will likewise launching a nonprofit for homeless advocacy. And then he sent a Facebook group link. But there's no other questions right now. So if anyone else wants to either comment or speak it, go ahead.
Yeah, we'd love to hear comments. For those of you who have to drop off, I know it is 12 o'clock. So thank you for participating. I hope you found it enjoyable and of value. But I would love to stay on for anyone else who might be interested in sharing their thoughts.
There's one more question I see. Are trademarks crucial to having a successful licensing program?
Absolutely. It's so important to have a trademark because a trademark gives you legal standing, right? So if you don't have a trademark and you're out there producing merchandise without a trademark, anybody could knock it off. Plus, in addition, trademarks give legitimacy. So there are not going to be really any companies who would be interested in creating merchandise with your logo on it unless it was protected, because they want to make sure that their merchandise is protected so that the program is successful. So while that is a component of the program, it's a very important component. Obviously, all the rest of the things we discussed today are equally as important.
He said, I see, does that hold for copyright as well?
Yes, of course. And so there are different elements of intellectual property. There are trademarks, copyrights, and what they call trade secrets. A trade secret is just that, it's a secret. So example, the Coca-Cola secret formula, their 7X formula, how they make Coca-Cola, has never been published. It is called a trade secret, but that secret is not shared with anyone. So the things that are shared, so it's put into this concoction that is given to the bottlers, and the bottlers then make the beverages. So no one actually knows, There are only a very few people know what that secret formula is. But when you're talking about a licensing program, then you want to have it something copyrighted if it's like lyrics to a song, or trademarked if it's a brand identity or a logo or some kind of brand element. That's very important to be to make your program official.
Perfect. Now there's one more question that I see, just asking what's the next topic of the next webinar. He said it's very impressive. So.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm following my book, Expand, Grow, Thrive. And so we covered the introduction last time, and of course this is recorded, so we'll be posting this to YouTube for people to share and see again if they felt like they missed something. So the next topic is called, which is chapter 2, is around the connected economy. And so this whole idea of how we're all connected, that's really important. And it is even more important now during COVID-19, right? Because we're not able to see each other face to face physically. We have to do it through Zoom or some other platform like Teams. And so the connected economy is so critical to be successful. And as you can see, even with this COVID-19, again, every little thing has an impact on something else, because people aren't able to go to restaurants, people aren't buying food. Therefore, food is storing up and spoiling farms and in packing plants. And so everything is connected. And what we're going to talk about next time in 2 weeks is around the connected economy. And then we're going to jump into the Lasso model, the model that I co-created with a gentleman named Mark DeSoma. And the first topic around Lasso is this idea of lateral, how a brand can move from one category to the other through what I'll call the brand expansion point. And we'll get into that in more detail in 4 weeks' time. But next time will be around the
other promotional activities did you take part in during the Olympics to generate interest for the pins, and what made you choose them?
So as I mentioned, in addition to really before social media was big, it was 1998, but we had presence through our kiosks in and around the Nagano prefecture. We had, of course, the big building inside. We had the PR department promoting our program. We had pin traders. We had pin traders that have been collecting pins with the Coca-Cola company for years. There's an organization called Olympin, and they are actually an official organization. So they were sharing the word about the pins with all of their colleagues who were coming from all over the world weeks out in advance, telling them about what was going on. Of course, I mentioned to you how we were bringing the athletes into the pin trading center, and then the athletes were talking about the pins in those interviews, and that was promoting us even more. And then in addition to that, we gave some pins away as part of a promotion to draw people in. And of course, the pin of the day set was something that was created. It was a puzzle. So there was a lot of excitement around getting every pin so you could complete your set so that you could have this special, unique, very, very valuable piece of art, really, that you could keep in your home as an heirloom.
Perfect. That's all the questions I see.
Okay, well, listen, everyone, thank you so much for participating. I hope to see you in 2 weeks. Please, if you found value in this, please complete the survey that we're going to send out. And please share the link with others that's going to be coming out. We'd love to have more people participate and share the word more. Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you, Savannah, for all your help. I really enjoyed it. Take care, everyone.
Pete.
Peter just asked us one last question.
Okay.
Why Coca-Cola does not activate permanent nonstop pin trading?
That is a great question. I want to answer that because I wished we would have continued pin trading in Nagano. There was such a craze, and then we just vacated it. And everybody there was wanting so much to have more of it. The challenge with Coca-Cola is a big organization, and they go from event to event to event. And the individuals, and shortly after the Nagano Games, I actually left that group. So I wasn't able to beat the drum loud enough. And even though I worked with Coca-Cola on different Olympics, and Peter Sanava was participating still on the call, he and I worked together closely on the Sochi Olympic Games. He knows firsthand, because he was on the event retailer side of it, how challenging it is to get Coca-Cola to pay attention to something after it's over. And so I would say it's something that they could take more advantage of, but they don't. But you know who's learned from this? Is the Disney company. Disney was never a big player in pin trading. They saw how powerful it was, and they took on their own program, created pins. And of course, any of you that have been to any of the, the Walt Disney or Disneyland have seen all the pins they create, and they sell and trade those pins continuously. So it's a very smart idea, whoever asked the question. I wish Coca-Cola would do it more, but we haven't been able to get their attention. Anything else, Savannah?
Nope, that's all I see.
Okay. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you very much.
You're my pleasure, Peter. I hope we'll talk again soon. Let's not wait as many years as we have for this event.
Thanks again, Pete. Great.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for participating.
My pleasure.
Take care, everyone.